Frodo Baggins, the Ring-Bearer, the hobbit who carried the One Ring into the heart of Mordor and endured the fire of Mount Doom. For most people, that's where his story ends, with the destruction of the ring, the crowning of Aragorn, and the long journey home to the Shire. But the truth is, Frodo's story doesn't end there. Not at all. When we last see him in The Lord of the Rings, Frodo is standing on the deck of the White Ship, sailing westward from the Grey Havens. At his side are Bilbo, Gandalf, Elrond, and Galadriel, companions who had borne their own burdens and now were leaving Middle-earth behind. The sight is bittersweet. Sam, Merry, and Pippin weeping on the shore, while Frodo, pale and weary, disappears into the western horizon. It is one of the most moving farewells Tolkien ever wrote. And yet, it is also the beginning of a new chapter. Because Frodo did not sail to some vague unknown. He was headed to a very real place, one that Tolkien described in detail across his legendarium, the Undying Lands, Aman. And here lies the mystery. What became of Frodo Baggins after he stepped ashore in that blessed realm? What happens when a mortal hobbit, scarred by evil and yet purified by sacrifice, enters a land meant only for immortals? Did Frodo find peace? Did he live a long life among the elves? Did he even survive long beyond his arrival? Stay with me until the end, because Frodo's fate is one of the most profound and haunting mysteries in all of Tolkien's works. It is not fully written in the pages of The Lord of the Rings, but hidden in fragments in Tolkien's letters and in the echoes of the mythology he built around life and death. And if you've watched our episode about Gandalf and Aragorn's secret alliance, you'll know that Tolkien loved to leave hidden threads, glimpses of stories untold, waiting to be pieced together. Frodo's final chapter is one of them. So let's return to that ship sailing west and follow Frodo beyond the end of the story into the lands where no mortal hobbit was ever meant to walk. In Tolkien's world, mortality is a gift and also a boundary. Men and hobbits with them are bound to live their lives in Middle-earth and then pass beyond the circles of the world to a fate even the elves cannot know. The Undying Lands, Aman, were not meant for mortals. They were the realm of the Valar, the Maiar, and the immortal elves who had sailed west from the shores of Middle-earth. So why was Frodo, a hobbit, permitted to enter? The answer lies in the wounds he carried, from the moment he was stabbed on Weathertop by the Witch King's Morgul blade. Frodo was never truly whole again. The splinter that almost reached his heart left him with a lingering sickness, a cold shadow that would return each year on the anniversary of the wound. Add to this the bite of Shelob, the poison sting that nearly killed him, and the endless burden of carrying the ring itself, and you begin to see the toll. The ring did not just weigh on his neck, it gnawed at his soul. Every step toward Mordor was an act of survival, not just against Sauron's servants, but against the temptation whispering inside his mind. Even after the ring was destroyed, the scars remained. In the Shire, Frodo tried to live a peaceful life, but he could not. The wounds would not heal. And so, the Valar granted him grace. Not immortality, not escape from the gift of men, but a passage to the one place where he might find rest. Alongside Bilbo, Gandalf, Galadriel, and Elrond, others who had borne the burden of the rings, Frodo was offered sanctuary. Tolkien himself explained in his letters that Frodo was permitted to sail, because he was a ring-bearer, carrying a burden that few in all of history could endure. His sacrifice and his suffering made him worthy of mercy. It was not a loophole in the laws of Arda. It was a gift for one who had carried evil so far that he could not live in peace without help. Thus Frodo, a hobbit from the quiet fields of the Shire, was allowed to step onto the deck of the White Ship and sail west into myth. To understand Frodo's fate, we must first understand the place he sailed to. The Undying Lands, Aman, lie far to the west of Middle-earth, across the Great Sea. It is the home of the Valar, the great powers of the world, and the Maiar, their servants. It is where the first elves awakened before they ever crossed into Middle-earth, and where many of them eventually returned. But despite the name, Aman is not a place of automatic immortality. The word undying refers to those who dwell there, the immortal elves, the angelic spirits, and the Valar themselves. It does not mean that mortals who enter it are changed into something more. Tolkien was clear in his writings and letters. A mortal in Aman is still mortal. What then makes Aman different? It is a realm unmarred by the shadow of Morgoth. It is beauty untainted, a land where evil never took root, and where the wounds of the world are healed by its very air. For the elves, it is a return to their first home. For Frodo, it was something else entirely, a chance at healing, a peace that Middle-earth could no longer give him. Imagine Rivendell's tranquility multiplied 1,000-fold. Gardens of endless bloom, tended by Yavanna, the Vala of growing things. Seas whose music echoes the voice of Ulmo. Halls where wisdom and song never fade. In such a place, Frodo's wounds could at last be soothed, not erased, but calmed, like scars no longer burning. Yet even here, Frodo was bound to the gift of men. He did not suddenly share the long years of the elves. He would not live forever beneath Aman's skies. Tolkien emphasizes this in Letter 210. The mortals who set foot in the Undying Lands remain subject to death. So Frodo's journey west was not about escaping mortality. It was about giving him a chance to live what remained of his life in peace, surrounded by beauty and harmony instead of pain and memory. The White Ship reached the shores of the Undying Lands, though Tolkien never describes the moment. He leaves it to our imagination. Frodo, weary and scarred, stepping onto a beach where the air itself was different, lighter, clearer, filled with music too soft for mortal ears. What then awaited him in that blessed realm? Though Tolkien never wrote a direct account, he left clues. Aman was the dwelling place of the Valar and the refuge of the elves who departed Middle-earth. For them, it was homecoming. For Frodo, it was something stranger, a hobbit in a land where no hobbit had ever walked. We can picture him welcomed with honor. Galadriel, who once gave him the Phial of Light, might have led him into gardens where Yavanna's trees bloomed with endless fruit and fragrance. Elrond, who healed his wounds in Rivendell, could now offer him rest where no shadow would touch him. Gandalf, revealed no longer as a wizard, but as Olorin the Maya, stood beside him not as guide, but as friend. And Bilbo, at last freed from the long pull of the ring, may have smiled as though his youth had returned for a little while. In such company, Frodo's pain would have eased. The aching memory of the Morgul wound, which flared each year in Middle-earth, would be softened. The heaviness of carrying the ring, the weight he could never set down, might finally have lifted. His heart, long burdened with sorrow and guilt, could find gentleness again. Some imagine Frodo spending his days in quiet reflection. Perhaps he walked the endless shores with Bilbo, telling stories to elves who had never heard of hobbits. Perhaps he sat beneath the golden light of Lorland's descendant trees, writing, singing, or simply listening to voices that carried no malice. Tolkien hints in his letters that Frodo's stay was one of rest and healing, not of great deeds. Unlike Middle-earth, where every day was a struggle against darkness, Aman required nothing from him but to breathe, to live, and to heal. He would not fight wars, nor lead, nor carry burdens again, and yet his presence had meaning. Among immortals, Frodo was a living reminder of the courage of mortals, the smallest who bore the greatest burden. The elves, who sang of ancient heroes, now had before them a hobbit who had saved their fading world. For Frodo himself, Aman was not paradise in the sense of eternal joy. He was still mortal, still destined to die. But for the first time since he left the Shire, he could truly live without pain, surrounded by beauty that reflected the harmony he had long sought. It was a gift of time, not of eternity, and that made it all the more precious. The Undying Lands were never meant to change the fate of men, and Tolkien, ever precise about the laws of his world, made it clear that Frodo's journey west was not an escape from death. The name itself, the Undying Lands, often misleads readers. It sounds like a promise of eternal life, a place where no one dies. But in truth, the title refers to its inhabitants, not its power. The Valar, the Maiar, and the Elves, they do not age as mortals do. They are bound to the world until its very end. For them, Aman is home. For mortals, it is a refuge, but not a transformation. In Tolkien's letter 210, he explains directly, "Mortals who set foot in Aman remain mortal. Their lives may be extended, their suffering eased, but they cannot become immortal. Death, the gift of men, still awaits them." Frodo, Bilbo, and later Sam, all three would live longer and healthier in Aman than they ever could have in Middle-earth, but none could remain forever. This truth carries great weight. Frodo did not cheat fate. He did not win immortality as a prize. Instead, he received what Tolkien described as a kind of grace, a healing space where his final years would be free from torment. His wounds would fade into scars. His heart would mend. And when at last he laid down his life, it would be with peace rather than anguish. The image is bittersweet. Frodo, walking the serene gardens of Aman, knowing that one day, perhaps soon, perhaps many years later, he would pass beyond even this paradise, to the place where the spirits of men go, a realm hidden even from the Valar. And in that knowledge lies Tolkien's deepest theology, that death is not a curse, but a mystery. The elves, bound to the world, envy it. Men who cannot see beyond it fear it. But for Frodo, who carried the ring's shadow longer than anyone else, death at last became release. The Undying Lands gave him what Middle-earth could not: the strength to meet that final gift without fear. Frodo was not the only hobbit who carried the burden of the ring. For a short but terrible time, Samwise Gamgee bore it as well when he believed Frodo dead in the lair of Shelob. And that single act, his willingness to take up the ring and continue the quest, made him a ring-bearer too. Because of this, Sam was also granted the grace to sail west. But unlike Frodo, his time in Middle-earth was not yet finished. He lived many long years in the Shire, raising a family, serving as mayor, and watching the land heal after the Scouring. Only when his wife Rosie passed away and his children were grown did Sam finally turn his eyes westward. The Red Book tells us only that he passed over sea, last of the ring-bearers. It is a quiet line, almost hidden in the appendices. But in that one sentence lies a touching symmetry. The journey that began with Frodo and Sam walking out of the Shire together ended with them reunited on the far side of the world. Many imagine Sam finding Frodo again in the gardens of Aman. Perhaps he found him sitting beneath golden trees or walking along the sea at twilight. The joy of that meeting is left to our hearts, but Tolkien's readers have always believed it. Frodo was not alone in his final years. His dearest friend came to him at the end, and so the fellowship's bond endured even across the sea. Bilbo, Frodo, and Sam, three hobbits from the smallest of places, now shared their last chapter together in the holiest of realms. Some fans like to picture Sam tending a small garden in Yavanna's domain, while Frodo at last rested free of pain. Others imagine Bilbo chuckling at their side, his wit sharp, even as age finally caught him. We cannot know the details, but we know the heart of it. Frodo's story, which began in the Shire with Sam at his side, found its closure with Sam at his side once more. In that, there is a quiet kind of perfection. For all the beauty of Aman, Frodo could not stay there forever. The Undying Lands gave him rest, they gave him healing, but they could not change who he was. Mortal, a hobbit of the Shire, a child of Middle-earth. And so, after many years we can only imagine, for Tolkien left them unwritten, Frodo's time came at last. We do not know where he laid down his life. Perhaps it was in the halls of the elves, in the soft glow of their songs. Perhaps in a quiet corner of Yavanna's gardens, where the air was always sweet, the grass always green. Some imagine Sam tending that garden at the end, keeping Frodo company until the very last. However it happened, Frodo's passing was gentle. There were no wraiths, no battles, no darkness, no burden of the ring clinging to his spirit. For the first time since Weathertop, he was free of shadow. He died as a hobbit should, in peace, surrounded by love. And then came the great mystery, the fate of men. For even in Aman, Frodo's spirit would go beyond the world, beyond the reach of the Valar themselves. Tolkien was clear. Mortals leave Arda entirely. They pass into something no elf, no Maya, not even the Valar, can follow. A gift and a mystery hidden in the design of Ilúvatar. The elves may have sung of him after his passing. Perhaps his name was remembered in the halls of Mandos, not as a prisoner but as a guest, honored for his sacrifice. Perhaps the Valar themselves looked upon his spirit with grace. But beyond that, silence. Only Ilúvatar knows. This is what makes Frodo's ending so powerful. It is not the end of suffering alone, but the end of the road, the final farewell beyond even the Undying Lands. So what happened to Frodo after he went to the Undying Lands? He lived. He healed. He found peace. And then, like all mortals, He passed beyond the circles of the world, leaving behind not despair, but hope. His story is the quiet proof that even the smallest person, broken and weary, can still carry light enough to save the world, and still deserve rest when the burden is done. If you want to continue this journey through Tolkien's hidden tales, watch our episode about Gandalf, the Maya in disguise, whose secret origin shaped the fate of Middle-earth.